click on it and get in it, and then you can hit share from there.
All right, so let's say we are live. All right, so everybody can go in, and then let's see here.
I'm really excited to plug these in. I'm about to be like, "Hey Google, turn on the crock pot."
Your whole house is about to seize the means of production. Just so you know.
She said she don't.
On mine, it is still. Hold on, let's see.
Yeah, mine said error loading, but it's live now.
Yeah, I'm in. I can see that it's live.
Hi, Megan.
Hello, everyone. She's super excited about these plugs.
Listen, it's only 3:00 where you at right now. You'll get a 5. You'll get the plugs in. It'll be all right.
Yeah. Quarantine life, man. Hook it up.
Life is nonsense.
Quarantine life. I'd be like that when I find some Clorox wipes. I'd be like, what?
Wow. 2020 is just the saddest timeline possible.
What's weird is
Hey Megan, hey Steven. How's it going, guys?
Hey Megan. Hey Steven. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure that it's just for some reason doesn't look like you're streaming from mine. Did you get it from mine, Dave?
I see it. Yeah, I got it from yours.
Oh, so maybe it's just not showing up on mine. That's weird. All right, so hopefully that means it's working. We're gonna find out today. So we always give a couple minutes, so we'll get this party started soon. Sharing out public.
Yeah, we're live. We're right here.
Hooray, hooray, hooray. We'll get some folks some opportunity to jump on.
In the chat.
If necessary. Like just move to the side. All right, so let's see here. Steve, hey man, look at that. So Megan says it's good to see you, Jess. Steve says that he's chilling, drinking herbal tea and smoking his pipe. I like it.
All right.
I can just see it like just
Corncob pipe.
Corncob pipe.
Corncob pipe.
Fire crackling in the background.
Oh, that's our girl. Kiara, what's good?
What's up, Kiara?
Kiara, saw you on live earlier with the candidate, Mr. Lloyd Dobbs. So that was a good job. Lloyd Dobbs, District 52. Check him out. Shout out on here. Look at that. And I do want to say that Ty, unfortunately, is not on the panel today, and he's also not behind the scenes. He will be in the chat at some point. Apparently, where he is, internet decided to not be a thing. So he is going to join in from his phone. And it's that type of pipe.
I don't even know what that is. That sounds like an expensive pipe.
Like a leprechaun pipe.
Cool.
One of those sharper image pipes.
And then thank everybody for joining. If you all have joined, if you could also please share live. Okay, now I can actually see that I'm sharing it live. If you could also please share live. And then remember how this works. It's not just about the people on the panel talking, but we ask everyone to get involved inside the chat as well. And then hopefully we'll see some of our regulars come on. Megan, where's Soren at? And we need him. So tonight, it's 8:03. I feel like we can go ahead and get started. We're going to have a really good conversation. To start, though, we'll do a quick introduction because we do have a new individual on the panel. But we'll start with some of the regulars. So hello, JD. Thank you, as always, for coming back. One of the founders of We Are Not OK, the show. How you doing today, brother?
Doing well. How about yourself, sir?
Oh, can't complain. Thank you for joining us, even though you have that garbage logo behind you. Jess, oh, and a horrible shirt. Jess, thank you joining us from the West Coast. How you doing, Jess?
Good. How are y'all?
Fantastic. Drea coming to us from North Kakalaki. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How's everybody else doing tonight?
Oh man, we can't complain. Look at that. Woo-hoo. Look at that storm. Where are you at? Oh, what part of North Carolina was asked?
Jacksonville, North Carolina.
Okay, I just came back from Yanceyville in the woods.
Ooh, that sounds
All right. Well, you know what? And new to the program for the first time tonight, we're welcoming Mr. David Williamson. How you doing today, brother?
I'm great.
That's you had you in the ATL, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Coming representing
one, I believe.
Very good. And then last but certainly not least, we have the Fast King Pharaoh. How you doing, brother?
Coming to us what's going on? What's happening, David? I'm so happy to be here.
Hey, man, we're happy to have you back. I am, of course, David here, representing Palm Bay, Florida, Brevard County. Boom. And this is the Are Not O.K show. And tonight, the topic is going to be centered around an interesting conversation, and that's, segregation. So there are gaps in this country between white and black, and we know that. According to one study, African American incomes on average are about 60% of white incomes. African American wealth today is about 10% of white wealth. And these things have not been created by accident, but we're not here tonight to talk about the creation. We're here to talk about some solutions and the directions that we should go. And some people believe that segregation is good for the black community. We should just do our own and break away, just have our own stuff. And some people think that that's not. We have a history of success around doing our own, but we've also seen what's happened when those things happen. I believe everybody knows about the Tulsa massacre that existed in 1921, where we had a Black Wall Street. If you watch a show called Last Week Tonight, a lot of people learned, this past weekend about what took place in 1898 in Wilmington, North Carolina, where a mob of over 400 white people, led by a former congressman, pretty much walked in, burned down, and murdered about 60 Black individuals. And it's the only coup d'etat that has ever taken place on American soil, because not only did they murder them, they overthrew the elected government that had been elected 2 days prior and replaced them with white supremacists. So we have a history of doing our own, and there's also a history of punishment from doing our own. And so if we go that direction, is it going to be the same? Is it not going to be the same? I don't know. We're going to have a good conversation tonight. So again, if you're in the chat, please take place into the conversation as well. Put that in the chat. We'll bring it in. And tonight we're going to go ahead and get this party started. So recently there was an announcement of a Black Wall Street. I don't know if we've all seen that. And there's also, I can tell you, like even locally here, there was now a new formation of the Black Chamber of Commerce for this area. Is this the direction that we should go, creating like the Black versions of things? And I will start by asking JD, since you're right there, if you can go ahead and give us your perspective on that.
So I think anytime we're trying to do something to uplift the Black community, I'm all on board with it. If we're trying to do something that is going to try to cause further division, then that's something that I'm not on board with. So I think about how pretty much every other race or groups, they do things to try to uplift their particular community. And I think that we should do that as African Americans. But if we're looking to try to like carve out our own piece of land or just do our own thing and completely segregate away from our counterparts, then like that's something I never agree with. I think if we're going to call America the great melting pot, what we were all told, if you're 80s baby, that's what you were told growing up in school. Like, I think we need to try to get as close to that as possible, because this is a land full of immigrants and some indigenous people, but mostly full of immigrants. And I think we have to find a way to come together versus finding more things that just continue to divide us.
Very good. Thank you very much. Interesting. Mr. Williamson, welcome to the show. Your perspective on the question. So is that a direction that we should be leaning towards?
I mean, as long as it actually has real influence, like real power. I mean, we had a Black president. I mean, did that change the communities drastically? You know what I'm saying? The Black version of anything in a system that's designed to do one thing really doesn't matter. And so unless we have the means by which to actually, exercise some kind of power over policy, or at least over some policy that we that's proximal to where we would like to, if we have our own communities, at least over the policy in that community, point of it. I mean, it's just a name, and we've been given a lot of symbol over substance over the years in this country, and it's never really changed much.
Interesting. And I like what you talk about, because the thing about Wilmington, like we actually had people in government, And at that point in time, we're able to make changes. And this is back in 1898, and they were removed violently and replaced by white supremacists. And then the story, and then the history of that story was changed. Drea, your thoughts?
So I agree with what JD is saying, that, we were all taught that this is a melting pot, and, every type of, immigrant or race, like, the Jewish community or Asian Americans, they have all created their own subset and built wealth for their community. I know there are some communities where they'll open up shops and have their children work there so that they can continue this generational wealth. And I think that's something the Black community hasn't collectively done as a whole. It's been a little bit on an individual basis, except for those cases like we mentioned, like with the Greenwood district where they started Black Wall Street and other areas like that. But we've all seen the results of that, like you mentioned, the massacre. And when we try to build our own, it's seen as a attack against I guess white supremacy, and they feel threatened that we're trying to build our own wealth. So if we do those things, we need to make sure that we're protected, getting the proper insurance, having the right protections in place, because we've seen what's happened in the past when we've tried to set that up. I definitely agree that I don't think it's segregationist to want to build wealth in your own community, but I think it could cross that line if you don't allow other races to buy from you. It's kind of like defeating the purpose. Like, no, you can only be Black if you buy from me. That would kind of defeat the purpose. But I think pouring wealth back into our own community so that we're not relying on other races to build our schools, build our banks, build our movie theaters, and such things like that. I don't think that's segregationist at all. I think that's being a smart, community oriented society.
Interesting. Thank you. Fast King, what are your thoughts on the subject?
Honestly, for me, since this whole thing started, always struggled to try and find my place in terms of where I belong in society and where my community should be. I have two sides where I have the one side where I want to see full integration. I want America to accept me as a child of this country, and to accept my people. But I've seen the end result. Well, not the end result, but I've seen the results up till now of what attempting that has caused, and I feel more divided from them than ever before. I like the idea mentally, the fantasy of being able to fully segregate and have our own, but I see the problems of infrastructure. I look at the wealth inequality gaps, and I can see how those could be exacerbated by further separation. On top of that, there seems to be a strange undercurrent of separation anxiety when it comes to white America's handling of Black communities, where anytime they see us beginning to isolate ourselves, they have this adverse negative reaction to it, and they simply must do something in order to quell it. I feel them gearing up for aggression, and I'm not sure what to do about it. What to do about it next, or what I should think. So I'm not too sure. I don't know.
Man, I appreciate you, Jess. And we and I had a good conversation about this yesterday. Yeah. So if you don't mind sharing your thoughts on the subject at hand.
Yeah, I think when it comes to understanding what that actually means, I think we can't do it by ourselves. I think we need mentorship along the way. So whether it comes from, financial, where it comes from health, education, whatever the case may be. So that way, for another race to actually do it and do it well, or another culture to do it well, I think we should learn from them. I think they would be able to empower, and not us, and in my experience, having a crab in a barrel type of mindset. And I think that's what holds us back more than ever, because if we practice corporate economics, if we wanted to live in the house with, grandma, grandpa, auntie, cousin, along the way, so that house and then go to the next house and then, do all of these things, I think we would have a better chance at building generational wealth. I think we would have a better chance of building our own communities. But at the same time, it's a mental blockage that we have right now.
So, and Drea, you said something interesting. So when I think about us separating or detaching and saying we're going to create our own, I don't necessarily see it as we're going to create our own and you can't get from us unless you are Black. But I'll ask a question. So, for example, if you have a Black Chamber of Commerce, should a white business be able to join the Black Chamber of Commerce?
Well, I think that kind of defeats the purpose of having the Black Chamber of Commerce, because it was created to boost Black businesses. It's not to say that, I guess you would walk the line between like reverse discrimination, but the intent is to build up Black businesses. But I don't. That's a very fine line to walk, because you'll get into scenarios where people are like, well, hey, I tried to apply for the Black Chamber of Commerce and I got denied because I was a white company. So you just have to be careful with that. I will say that with the Black community, we have always been accepting of other races and allowed them to come into our space without any difficulty. But we can't say the same for the reverse, and that's why we've had to create our own Black spaces. Good Lord, I cannot talk today. Black spaces. So, like I said, it's a fine line. I wouldn't say that they should be denied from joining the Black Chamber of Commerce, but the intent and the focus should be on supporting Black businesses.
Dave, it looked like you were chiming in as well.
Yeah, because I was. It's kind of how this country has, to me, from what I learned in school to compared to what I've lived, from childhood on up, the gap between what we're taught or expect from this country versus what we get. And so I hear the concern for like complete segregation or complete separation, but that's what everybody else has done. I mean, in every major city, you have a Chinatown or there's a Jewish area, there's an Italian area, and when we try to go into those communities, they make it complicated, to put it mildly. And so it's like for us on the opposite end of living in a world or a country where that's pretty much seems to be the expectation, at least from them. But the expectation from us is the opposite. We are supposed to desire to integrate into a system that tells us every day they don't want us, and that's just a strange kind of dichotomy for a race of people. And I think that's what creates a lot of the times what appears to be contradicting messages, is that we're trying to make sure we don't say the wrong things, but they do the wrong things in our face, and it's publicly accepted daily, But we constantly are muting and censoring ourselves in this society, and I don't think that that's going to be a way for us to attain any kind of power or leverage here. Is muting ourselves and being overly concerned with offending them or scaring them in the face of terrorism.
Well, it's funny because this reminds me of, and I had a really got into a heated conversation with somebody about this, and something so simple from the movie Drumline back in the day. And I said, Drumline sensationalized a problem that we continually have. And that was, they had the white dude who was trying to take the Black dude's spot on the line. And when he did, everybody celebrated yeah. And I was just like, that's kind of a jacked up thing, though. It's a historically Black college. It's created to give opportunities to Black people that they're not necessarily getting somewhere else. And then we say, okay, well, come on in, because as a people, we're usually like, hey, let's embrace you. And then we overly celebrated that he took the job from the Black dude. Yeah. And I was like, I feel like this is a problem. And people had a problem with me feeling like it was a problem. And the people who had a problem were Black.
It's because we are expected to always forgive and to always be accepting of we are the consumers. We're not supposed to produce anything. We're supposed to consume on behalf of everyone else. So technically speaking, we're already segregated. You can ask any standard white person, be like, hey, where's the bad area? They're going to point to the Black neighborhood. And it's just, you go there and you look and you see the absolute inequality. You see what's happening there. You see that there's a feeling of a lack of ownership. So if you step into project housing, because they don't feel as if they own it, they don't have anything invested, they don't care about it. So there's trash everywhere. It's terrible because there's no concept of ownership. They don't think that place is theirs, but it's literally just it's the drain of the tub. You didn't go there. You ended up there because you didn't have a choice. So we don't. So it's for us here. I don't understand how. I don't know how for us to properly segregate ourselves and then to be able to support the infrastructure for it without having other powers come in and destroy it, because that's not your place, Darky. We need you over here buying, Little Debbie snack cakes and Doritos from the corner store. That's what we need you doing. We need you buying our cheap plastic crap. Stop with your highfalutin thinking.
Yeah.
So I think some of the problem herein lies is in the word segregation. Seeing that when we think about the civil rights movement, we fought so hard during that movement to desegregate and to mix in with schools and the struggles and everything that happened with that. And I think in some people's minds, when you say the word segregation, it's like we did all this work to take all these steps back. Like we already take step backs consistently as a society. Like look at TV, that shows us that on a consistent basis. But I think when we blatantly throw it out there and use the word segregation, that puts that in people's minds. So for me, I'm like, uplift Black communities, right? So when I think about uplifting Black communities, that means taking pride in what we have, right? So we had a really good conversation around like, how do we fix the ghettos and all this other stuff? And that spawns off into a whole nother thing. But like the first thing that came to my mind is, how do you fix the ghetto? Well, how is it fixed when it's gentrified? They run it down, they buy it at a cheaper price, they destroy it all, and they build up really nice stuff, and then they put rich people or people who have more money there, right? And that's technically how you fix it. The problem is we don't have the financial, the money to actually make that happen, right? Like we don't have the money to tear down everything and then build it anew and build it better.
Yeah, and I think that's why we have to highlight the importance of reinvesting wealth back into the Black community and learning, how do we flip houses? How do we, invest in businesses to grow so that we can, put that back into our community. And I like the comment, is uplift a better word than segregate? I definitely agree that when I think of segregation, I always go back to like Jim Crow era, that type of notation. And I don't think that's what the Black community is trying to do. We're not trying, well, I would say 75% of the Black community, we're trying to just reinvest wealth back into our own community so that, we can stop violence in our community, stop homelessness, stop, the redlining, things that happening. That's what we're trying to fix. There are others that completely want us to create our own little colony, and this is Black America. You cannot come here unless you're Black. I don't think we should go that far because that's the whole thing we're looking for is equality in America. And trying to segregate ourselves, I feel, is taking 10 steps backwards for what all of our civil rights leaders have been fighting for.
So let me ask this question, because I hear somewhat of a consistent theme of, it feels like we are taking step backwards because of what civil rights leaders are fighting for. Are we taking step backwards, or are we continually push back? Because
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so because that would be my question, as far as like, I don't know if I see it as us taking step backwards. So just go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, and I don't know if I see it as taking steps back, or even the action of assessing or reassessing strategies of people, many of whom are no longer here. It's not sacrilegious to question this with hindsight. We have hindsight now. It's not so where they were at and the decisions that they made perhaps were the best ones for us collectively at the time. But for us to be able to, at this point, reassess or critique those decisions, or perhaps pivot, like we're allowed to do that. I mean, because we see the disparity has actually gotten worse since they were marching back then. So it's like for us to, I don't know. I just think sometimes we don't even deem ourselves special enough to just to take control of our own destiny in ways that may not have been considered before.
And I think that's a fair assessment, but I also think there's some fear that's in there too, because we've seen what has history taught us, right? And I get you, but I'm just saying, like one of the things that like I'm really good at doing is looking at it from all sides and kind of assessing what's happening everywhere, and then still being really strong in where my ideals are. So like I understand what everyone's saying here on taking things into your own destiny, but like we have some really good examples of like when that happened. And then what was the aftermath of that, right? And you want to talk about taking 10 steps back. That was like taking 30 steps back, because all that wealth, all that was built was destroyed in a matter of moments, right? So I think a lot of it has to do with the word. And I think a lot of it has to do with who's speaking about it. Because we do have some people that look like us that literally want to just carve out their own, and I'm never going to be on board with that. I'll continue to say it, like it's going to be a broken record. It's going to be a consistent theme for me. But when I think about uplifting the Black community, I think an example of like we have a page for just the city of Columbus that's all about Black businesses, right? So I go on that page, and at least once or twice a week, I look at one of these businesses where I can go get lunch, buy a good or something like that. And what it's done for me is it let me see some businesses that you don't really see advertised on your Googles or on commercials, etc. So it kind of broadened my horizons to things like that. Now, guilty, bought something from Amazon 2 days ago, right? Like Bezos doesn't need any more money, like he's good. But have I done it? Absolutely. I think it's me trying to make that shift to make sure that I look at the talent that's out there and try to make sure that my hard-earned dollars are spent with different businesses. So that way, like, one, I can get a different experience, and two, I can see what businesses are around me that are doing some amazing work.
This is for you, Drea, because she was looking at when you talked about reverse discrimination.
No, I definitely agree. So a lot of people bring up the topics of affirmative action, reverse discrimination, things of that nature. And, I say those issues have been put in place because there wasn't true equity. I don't feel like it's, making special cases for Black people. Like, this is just evening the playing field. So I don't believe in reverse discrimination, and affirmative action is bad, because I feel like it's allowing opportunities for people of color, minorities, to have a foot in an uneven playing field. So this is kind of equalizing the status quo.
So, Dre, I'm gonna ask a quick question on top of that. And this isn't directed at you; it's really directed at anyone. So, when you think about, you were talking about making that equal playing field and helping get more equity. Anybody on the panel or anybody in the chat, has anybody thought about when they were having children what they were going to name their children, so it would give them an opportunity, to actually get an interview? Like, did you think about the name that they would write down on their job application that would help them get in front of somebody so they could like see them for who they are, not what their name was? Has that happened? Because I can tell you,
I've never really thought about it as far as like naming children, but I've thought about like, different names that I see. And, there was a post today by a Tredarius White, and I think he's a football player. And someone commented on his page, if I saw someone named Tredarius coming in for my job interview, I wouldn't hire him. And, Tredarius said, this Tredarius, was a 3.1 valedictorian and, all A student. So, and I'm also aiming to be a boss where I do the hiring. So your comment is not needed. So I have seen cases where, there's definitely discrimination about, the naming of people. And I know several individuals that will name their children, either male sounding names or standard, Europeanized names, so that they don't get discriminated simply based off of their name.
I think the other part is understanding that when you have affirmative action, or you have these different places that we, are given the opportunity to get in, then once you get in, then you're getting that, broken highlighter and a brown crown to actually fit into the culture of whatever said business that hired you because of a diversity or affirmative action play. I think where the psychological warfare comes in is knowing that you got hired for that, and then other people saying, oh, you got hired because of that. And now you're battling back and forth to show that you truly belong there because you're talented and you're skillful and you can kick ass and take names for the job versus just because you're Black. I think those are huge issues that a lot of people don't really talk about.
And I think you bring up a valid point, and it brings me back to the original subject, because if we're continually trying to incorporate ourselves into their aspect of what they want us to, and it's not designed for us, as David said earlier, then it feels like we're going to keep trying to prove ourselves in a system that wasn't designed for us to succeed as it is. So my next question is then, if that's the case, where are the places that you feel like it would be good to detach ourselves or have our own, uplift ourselves or segregate ourselves from, that would make sense? So are there specific areas of interest or places of or types of business or industry where it's like, hey, we should probably be having our own?
Law.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Law?
Yep.
Yeah,
100%.
That's an interesting.
Couldn't agree more.
5% of the lawyers, I just read this stat, 5% of lawyers are Black.
Five.
When you think of, 5%. When you think of from a healthcare standpoint, that's where mine is. Like it's less than that. Andrea, I believe you can attest to that. I think we should have our primary healthcare be Black physicians. And based on, what I've been going through and based on what my friends have been through when it comes to, giving birth or even just going to the doctor and having people listen to you because of your pain levels. It's just, I am so paranoid now that all of my doctors are Black. Like my dentist is Black, my gynecologist is Black, my primary healthcare physician is Black. The nurses that I talk to, all Black, because I wasn't being heard. And to go into a space to where this person's supposed to help you and they have a license to do so, but they choose not to based on studies that they've done on Black women to show that you don't have any type of pain, you don't feel pain because they perform things with you without anesthesia, is absurd. And those practices are still done to this day. So that's one where I'm like, I have to have that tried, because I don't want to go to a regular doctor visit and someone misdiagnosed me and I end up 6 feet under.
Yeah. Healthcare, and there's a lot of head shaking, like, yes.
Yes.
Here's what I would tell you that's really, it's a strange thing that I never thought about until this very moment, but I have not had a Black doctor. And I'm sure there are Black doctors where I live. God, I hope. But for the most part, when I go into the practices, like my general healthcare physician, it's a white guy. Now I've not been treated any different. He's a good doctor. But I've never had it. So I didn't think about maybe this is something that we should have.
Well, recently, there's been a couple of studies that have gotten a lot of attention I don't know how these papers have gotten published, but essentially there was a white pediatrician that came out saying that, non-Western cultures don't have the same drive and initiative to, thrive in healthcare, and, just essentially saying, Blacks and Hispanics were lazy, and if they ended up in healthcare, it was because of, affirmative action and blah, 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 tired rhetoric. So that paper just ended up getting retracted, but this is the mindset that's really pervasive in a lot of healthcare. So when we hear about, Serena Williams having to fight to be heard by her doctors, it's not out of the realm of possibility, because this has been so pervasive in medicine. So, I definitely agree with what Jess says, making sure you at least have one physician that, is Black and is going to take you seriously. And, I see Ty's comment about, doesn't matter what the person looks like. In an ideal world, that would be great. But oftentimes it's not the case. Even for myself, going to see the doctor, I've had good Black doctors, I've had good white doctors, and then I've had some not so great Black doctors and not so great white doctors. Majority, it's been not so great white doctors because they invalidated my pain, invalidated, the things that I was saying. And I thought it would get better with me being a physician, but sometimes they don't recognize that I'm a physician and they try and like swindle me. And I'm like, hold up, wait a minute. Let's talk about this lab result that you skipped over. Let's talk about that. So I definitely agree that, creating our own spaces in healthcare and law and other places are necessary because we need to be heard and our concerns have not been heard.
So I'm curious to see if, because it seems like Jess, Drea, you've had this experience. Personally, I've never had that experience. I've never had anybody invalidate my pain. I've actually had the opposite. I'm arthritic in both knees. I've literally had doctors like, I don't know how you still walk around and you're not in pain. So like I've had kind of the opposite effect. So not saying that it doesn't happen. I'm just wondering, is it something that is more frequent in women than it potentially is? Okay. I was just wondering.
Yeah. Because that study where Black women are more likely to die in childbirth in the 21st century, like that is absolutely ridiculous with the amount of technology and medical miracles that we have. Like this should not be a thing. We should not be seeing Black women die at an alarming rate compared to, other races. So it's definitely prevalent in women because back to, several topics that we talked about, the strong Black woman trope. It's tired and it's dangerous, and that's why we need to change the narrative because it's costing Black women's lives.
Agree. So, and I know that there was a study that came out that they asked a lot of doctors, about Black people, and there was a belief in a lot of these doctors that Black skin was thicker than white skin, and so which is absolutely insane, and that because Black people don't necessarily go to the doctor as much, they have a fear of the doctor. So when they come in, some of that pain might be exaggerated because it's just coming from the fear that they have of going to the doctor. So you mix that together of, oh, they have thicker skin, so we have to go harder, but they're not really in pain. They're just over exaggerating it because they don't come here. It's a scary ass combination of reasons why we probably shouldn't go to a white doctor. So
that goes back to a generational mindset too. I mean, you think of just Tuskegee experiments, you think of just certain things that have been performed on Black people. I mean, my grandfather fought in Nam, and he has to be with one arm broken and the other one carrying his leg for him to even go to the doctor because he experienced that. So how do you change that stigma? But again, like to your point, 2020, we're still having doctors come out and saying, yeah, we do treat Black patients different than all other patients. Like that's alarming in itself.
There's so many, surveys that, we got in med school and discussions in our ethics classes talking about implicit bias, meaning, or unconscious bias, meaning that, what happens when you walk into a room and you see a patient of another race? Like what do you kind of experience? Do you change your, how you're going to treat that patient? And, oftentimes the results of the survey say, I treat my Black patients differently because I think they have, higher pain tolerances. And that's why it's so dangerous, these studies that have come out in the past. And it's just like, going back to the original point, this is why we need Black people in healthcare, Black people in law enforcement, lawmakers. It's really important.
But that brings up a really good point because I think we have Black people in healthcare, and then I'll ask Fast King or even David. So we have Black people in healthcare. Have you guys seen a way to where we can acknowledge or understand who the Black doctors are in healthcare in your particular area?
It's actually part of my Black Doctor Collective. There is an app that they have created where they've everyone is joining and listing this is the Black doctors in these particular areas. So there is an app that is showing that, so people can find dentists, primary care, health workers, specialists, things of that nature. So, there is an app that has recently come up in development that should be available for the masses shortly. I think it's actually already running. If I find it, I'll drop a link to it.
Even Psychology Today, if you wanted to find a therapist, you go on Psychology Today, you can break it down to where, like, if you're looking for someone that looks like you and specializes in, African American trauma, a lot of therapists are putting that out there and who they want, who they can serve. So Psychology Today is really helpful. Therapy for Black Girls is another website that you can go to. So if you wanted to find someone in particular to talk to, again, that's another website that you can go to.
So healthcare, whether it's physical or mental, yes, that is an opportunity that we should probably look to working with a professional that looks like us, because they may have our best interest in mind. Let me ask about education. So our education system is, for lack of a better word, flawed. Is that an area that we should be taking more in control of ourselves? And I'll start this question with Mr. David Williamson. Should we be taking control of our own education?
Yeah, to me, would be every fundamental aspect of human life. We should have options that are our options. Just like every other group of people does. And I don't think that that's a provocative statement. I think that we've been disallowed to do so much to where we even deem it provocative to want to do it. And it's like everybody else has created and budgeted their own communities with thinking that is only beneficial to their own communities. And we don't blink an eye. We like, that's what they do. And anytime we consider it, it becomes a thing where, I don't know, it just, something keeps us from centering ourselves in this country in a way that to me will ever change anything. Like, if we don't center ourselves, we ain't gonna change anything here. And whatever fears or whatever it is that prevents this from happening is like, it's ridiculous to me, because it's like the alternative, we're living it, and if that becomes acceptable to any one of us, then that's a problem to me. So any fears to me should be allayed by the statistical necessity of change. And I think we're too concerned with how people feel, like people like how, I don't like to even use the word white fragility, but white fragility becomes more important than statistical necessity, in this country. And that's ridiculous that we are considering their emotional response to necessity that's based upon state stats. And what we all know that has occurred here,
That's a very interesting perspective. Go ahead, Craig. I'm sorry.
I wanted to. I see Ty talking in the chat there, and I'm actually I'm with him. I was looking at what Terry Crews had stated. I don't know how long ago it was, but he got ripped to shreds. He got torn apart. All right, and okay, so I hear what David's saying as well, in terms of and sort of having something that's exclusive for Black people, and how we shouldn't be concerned with how others should feel. But the unfortunate reality is that the white fear generates gun sales, and white fear is what gets Trayvon Martin shot over a bag of Skittles and an Arizona iced tea. White fear is what caused Philando Castile to get bullet ridden in a car with his girlfriend and little girl in the back. Their feelings, unfortunately, dictate our lives. So we cannot just disregard them. For me, what I would like more healthcare professionals, and I definitely want more lawmakers, but not so much that because I want people who can serve me. I want to get my tendrils into every facet of American society possible. I want to make it. I would, at this point in time, I would want us to almost become parasitic. We are only 13% of the United States population. We cannot wage war against them. We will lose. People like Steve Bannon, and most of Breitbart News, pretty much, they want race war. They want it. They want it bad. I hear the rhetoric. I hear what they're saying. I hear what they want to do. They want to dehumanize us so that they can go after us. And once they have that, oh, look at them, they're isolating themselves. Once separation anxiety comes back into play for white America, they get to go, they're not one of us. So now we get to go ham. We get to ethnically cleanse them the way we've always wanted to do. I want our tendrils in everything. I want us in education. I want us in healthcare. I want us in sanitation. I want us in every facet of American life as possible, so that if they ever tried to rip us out, they would die in the process. What we need is massive integration on an unbelievable scale. I want us in politics. I want us in healthcare. I want us in food production. I want us in movies. I want us behind the scenes. I want us in front of the scenes. I want us in every part of society. For us to continue to segregate only puts us in a worse position should they ever decide that we are a serious problem. And right now, they're already getting there.
But I think that's what the ultimate goal is, and that's where I have issue with segregating. I don't think putting wealth back into your community is segregating. I think that's uplifting your community. So when you say you want us in every aspect, I totally agree with that. But what I'm saying is, with all of these studies that are coming out showing that, whites in healthcare don't have, Black people's best interests at heart. I mean, I don't want to risk my life by going to someone who doesn't care about me.
Absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
And we're living in a society where it feels like, Craig, Fast King, I'm not telling you that ideology is wrong. I'm telling you that I think that ideology has existed for a while, and the effort has continued. But in that effort, we continually, they continually have new ways to change the finish line.
Oh yeah,
and
there's some absolute.
And in doing so, people are hurt, killed. You lose your identity. There's so many different things that take place that are detrimental to our community, because that line keeps getting moved, and we keep saying, but eventually we can actually be a part of this race.
Yeah.
And we are not having the honest conversation and that's that the race was not designed for us to even participate in.
That's why I'm suggesting we cheat. Listen, I am morally ambiguous. I am a pastor's child, which means that I gave my heart over to Satan quite some time ago. I do not care. What I want is I want to see my people be great. I want to see my people be great. And what I'm scared of and what I'm seeing is shunning of people who could be our allies. I see a lot of weird anti-Semitism that comes from our groups. And yes, we've always tried we've tried my method. We've been doing it, but only in 2020 has the resurgence been so hard, in a time period in which we have an information explosion. Like, we're having this conversation right now, and there are people who are nowhere near us who are in on this conversation. And that doesn't include the recorded part of this conversation that'll go out to thousands more people. So our information now gets exploded among a massive group of people. And what I'm saying is that we need to be by ourselves. We need to isolate, and we need to shun people who could potentially be our allies. I don't like the vein of pushing other people out. I want every ally I can get.
And I agree with you when it comes to getting, every ally that we can get. Why is it, and I'll pose the question, David, why is it that we are so hard on ourselves when we're trying to uplift us when every other group does it, and does it from Jump Street? Like, why are we having a conversation about us building corporate economics to better but we don't want to move, we want to isolate ourselves within, we don't want to, what mind game are we playing right now? But when I go to my Latino friends, or I go to my Jewish friends, they're like, this is how we grew up. Like, all of us are in the house together. We pay off that house, then we go to the next house. Within 5 years, they own the block. So I'm getting passionate because I'm like, are we really in our own way? Are we really in our own way to say we're literally having a conversation about the progression of us? Where, again, other groups, it's like, oh, we need to make sure that we settle in. Okay, we need to bunker down. We need to make sure that we're going to get to the next level. So our kids can have monies. Our kids, we can send them to college. We can give them, a home when they get married, or we can pay for their wedding. Like all of these different things that happen in different groups, yet that doesn't happen with us because we're sitting here fighting with ourselves. Like it's so insane to have this conversation, to know that others are not.
We're worried about offending other people when they don't care about offending us. So they just do it. So I agree with you, Jess. It's time for us to build our own wealth up because nobody's going to care about us besides us. So if that offends us.
Wait, hold on, David. What you say? I'm sorry.
I was just saying and it's not even the sensible white people we're worried about offending. We're worried about offending the derelicts.
People who don't even care about us to begin with are worried about, what will they think? Our allies are going to rock with us regardless. It's the people who are on the other side that are just like, ooh, no, don't shake the boat too much. Stay, don't shake the table. Stay on your side. We'll stay on our side. And, equality, yay. Those are the people that, we're worried about offending because our allies see that, we're not treated equally and they're going to be like, hey, you got a Black business to support? I'm with it. Whereas the other people are like, oh, don't you think that's a little segregationist? And we're like, what? No.
To answer your question, Jess, from my opinion, it's for some reason, well, not for some reason, when you talk about pro-Black and things that seem of that nature, when you have a certain group of white people who get offended, it's because pro-Black is not anti-white. It's pro-Black in stopping things that have happened to the Black community, which is typically done by white people throughout history. So it forces them to take a look at themselves, and that forcing of looking at yourself and not feeling good puts them in a corner of like, how dare you try to make me feel bad about something my ancestors did, as if it was that long ago and that they're still benefiting off of today. Mm-hmm. So that's where that push that comes in and that fight back, that triggered response, it's just coming back in hardcore because for some reason in their mind, they can't get away from pro-Black being or things that are beneficial to Black being anti-white, because quite frankly, it's us trying to overcome certain whiteness that has kept us oppressed for a certain amount of time, whether that's abruptly or systematically. So that, in my opinion, is why you see that come out. Now, why we fall victim to it, I think that is very on purpose. There's a lot of miseducation, programming. There are a lot of things that have taken place throughout our history to get us into this disorganized group of people that we are today that makes it so hard to do stuff that we've seen other people do that seems so simple. But I do want to ask a question to Fast King, because you said something, and Jess, you said it, like you would see folks in your Jewish community and they would come together and they would say, no, this is how we did it. And this is how we came out of that. Yeah. And Fast King, I want to ask you this question. If other people, just because other people have been oppressed before, does that automatically excuse them and make them an ally? And I asked that for a reason. Okay, because I asked that because I know there was a lot of people anti-Semitic, you can't do that and you can't say this, but there are systems that are designed where people of color are oppressed by people in the Jewish community who run and own those systems. Entertainment is one of, we don't own that. That's a very heavily owned and run Jewish industry that has oppressed and suppressed Black people from having success. And it's almost like you're shunned. Like, how dare you bring this up? And you start getting called names. And so I'm curious, it's that what you mean when you say?
When I say ally, I attribute to the very Genghis Khan idea of what an ally is. Whereas it is literally, I don't care who you are, I don't care where you're from. Are you with me? And let's get this bread. I'm in a very practical ally sense. Hey, are you down for my cause in going in this direction? I don't care where you come from. Now, I wanted to scroll back a little bit to I have a theory on as to why as to what Jess was talking about in terms of why we allow why we're even having this conversation right now. I think I don't know, it's probably a term in sociology. I don't know, maybe it is, but I want to call it something like cultural self-esteem, up until 1967. 1967 was when Virginia was the last state to allow interracial marriage. We as Black Americans are in a very unique position where our home country, where we come from, our continent really doesn't really claim us. They look at us and they call us lazy. We're lazy. We're good for nothing. We are the misbegotten children of America. So we don't really.
What do we call the lost ones?
The lost ones, right? So it's just like so for Black Americans, we don't really have a sense of historical pride that we can lean on. Like, hey, you're from my tribe. We have this rich history together. Let's come together and let's fall back on that. We have been oppressed forever. We are the children. We're all Thomas Jefferson's grandchildren. Just he had himself a slave, raped her, got a bunch of kids from it, and they refused to acknowledge him all the way up until 1996 or something like that.
Oh yeah,
it was until recently.
Yeah.
So it's just so for us, the reason why it's so easy to prey upon our self-esteem is because we don't have any sense of cultural. There's no sense of strength. All of our Black leaders, they luckily live to old age, but most of our Black males are in jail or have criminal records, and they can't build any permanence because they have a record. So it's just like it becomes more difficult. I look to allyship because I need my tendrils in everything. And when I see, for David's point, for the Jews owning most of the production companies, I don't know that. I don't have the numbers in front of me to be able to say what percentage of producers are Jewish. I don't think that they're out there actually like, okay, how can we oppress the Black people? I think if there are people who are in those positions, they just want to make money, and what makes money is look at these niggas and look how they cannot act. So they just go, that's what sells, so we will sell that. I don't know about any sort of a media push to put Black people down, but I know we need to change the way that we do things, because we're not gonna win a one-on-one war with these people. It's not gonna happen.
Go ahead, Diddy.
So Craig, so you said something.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I talk a lot, man.
I'm waiting to jump in here and let everybody talk. But you said no. You all good. Do your thing. But you said something about a lot of our Black males are ending up in jail, right? So like we started this thing off talking about this question off around education and should we have education for our own. So like I want to walk y'all through something, all right? And a couple of you in personal conversations, I've walked you through this. So like city budgets, they're public record. So I decided to go, what's the biggest city that's around me? It's Columbus, Ohio. I looked up their budget for this year, okay? So on the police, Columbus's budget is $360 million on a Columbus PD, all right? The next highest funded thing is public health, okay? So health. $360 million on police. Somebody take a guess. What do you think health is being funded at? 50,000, not that low. But it's $26 million. So it's the second highest funded thing after the police, and it's $26 million. Now, when you go to education is way down there at the bottom. And education is funded at $6.6 million. So $360 million in police. Ridiculous. Education is funded at $6.6 million. So we continue to talk about this whole kind of crazy, pipeline that happens. But when we look at like, how are we going to do something for us? Well, is there even funding to try to make that happen? Is where like I'm thinking about this. So if you look at like the budgets in our cities, like it goes back into, if we want things our own, we got to talk about like what are our political candidates running for? Like it's so many systems in play that we have to, fight against.
So what I hear
to try to make
is,
these things happen.
we need more of us to run for office, especially local offices that actually make decisions about your everyday. The president is going to set tones, good or bad. But your everyday life is going to be more dictated by your local office. We typically don't even know who the hell those people are.
That's why you got to read that book that comes in the mail. Open that bad boy up and read the book.
Wait, what book? What book? There's a book? Where's the book?
Sure, voting registration.
Well,
My bad, I'm sorry.
everybody's looking like, what book is she speaking?
So,
There's a book. Show me the book.
there's local elections, or we have a primary coming up. There's different elections at various times of the year.
But they don't send, if your county sends out a book or if your city sends out a book, that is not a practice that happens everywhere. Just as a heads up.
Oh, LA, we get it.
What? That's no bullshit, bro.
LA doesn't do it.
That's why California is trying to become its own country, because it's actually.
Wait, are you serious? You don't get a book anymore that breaks down the candidate?
Look,
Listen,
I got bills.
I'm not going to lie to you. I brought that up as something that we should do to get more people interested in voting, and they looked at it like it was a revolutionary idea. And I did not know that somebody else was doing it, because if you don't know what people stand, what they at least say they stand for, then you don't have an interest in actually going out to vote, because most of these parties, especially when they're nonpartisan, and you don't know if they're Dem or Republican, so you can't choose the cult that you choose to follow, then at that point, you don't know who is what.
I know goddamn book. What book? Where's this book at?
Like when I started voting, so whenever I turned 18, my friends and I would like literally get the book and we would sit down and be like, the things that we didn't know about, we would ask each other and then get input, and that's how we were able to vote.
No, we don't got no. We get like pythons and gators in the mail. We don't get no books.
Yeah, you got to go on to like websites and kind of temper what you're reading, because it might have a little bit of a slant to it. So yeah, it's not easy finding information about local, governments, people running for office, because, as we've seen from these ad campaigns, Joe Biden likes to lick children, Donald Trump.
Donald Trump's ads are about defunding the police.
Well, and I think that the sad part is that
my heart.
Yeah, when you take a look at government, we have allowed media to dictate so much that we are, and we've allowed people to utilize media, to dictate so much of this process of election, that it's no longer about understanding what people are about, but it's finding out who's the worst piece of shit and not voting for that person. Because that's all it is. It's this person sucks, this person's this person's that. And it's sad, because if you are going to look into it, you have to really dive deep into finding out who those folks are truly about. And I suggest, when I talk to folks in this area, don't listen to what the other person says about somebody. Listen to what they say about themselves and make that your decision, because then you're going to start finding truths. Because if the person, the only thing a candidate can say is something bad about the other person, they're probably a shitty candidate. That's just the way that works. So
I believe
Chris Evans created a website where you can, it's supposed to be non-biased, where you can get information about both sides, Democratic, Republican, and it's supposed to be like a non-biased site. I don't remember what the name of the website is called. If I find it, I'll drop it into the chat. He just recently did an interview on it, but it's supposed to be, super non-biased, so that you can get good information about the candidates.
Yeah,
very cool. So government, healthcare, education, and just overall, how do we uplift our community? So we are a little bit over on time, so I'm just going to ask just one last question, and that is, and I'll give everybody at least a couple minutes to respond. But if you, again, this is one of those, if you had a magic wand, and there was something, and there was something that you can actually change that you feel like would provide the biggest lift for our community, what would that be and why? And you're not going to have like those diatribes. You got up to 2 minutes to have this conversation. And we will start, let's see here, with Jess, because I feel like you just had this look like you were ready to go. So Jess, go ahead.
We need, if I had a magic wand, all states need a voting booklet that goes
A voting book.
and it breaks down the candidates, because I think what people tend to get confused for, if they are only voting for the president and they're only voting, for their party and not really identifying who's going to best serve their community because they don't know nothing about this person. Like, we have to start there. We have to start with who we're putting into office, because people forget. Oftentimes, these people that are in office in different parts of the country, in the Senate and the Congress, they're there for 20, 30, 40 years. So think about that. We had some people in these seats that have been there for generations after generations. So how are we able to not only uplift us when it comes to educating ourselves of who's running, but really questioning what they're going to do to uplift our community? That's what I want. Magic.
Very nice. And then what I would tell you, just as a heads up, in the comments, Ty says money, instruction, how it works, how it grows, and how to build your own. And then Megan says, yes, financial literacy is absolutely important. So thank you very much for that, Jess. JD, magic wand, what would you like to see?
Honestly, what I would like to see is these budgets change. Like, when you look, like I put in the comments, Palm Bay, Florida, 34 cents out of every dollar they spend on the police department, and you can't even find what they spend in total, so you don't know what's going towards education. At the end of the day, we've been defunding education, public health programs for years, and overfunding the police, almost turning into a tyrannical police state. So what I would like to see is I would like to see those budgets not only reevaluated, but those monies reallocated to where they should be. Because I know growing up in Palm Bay, Florida, Melbourne, Florida, I had a solid education. And I cannot say that the kids that are growing up there now had the same solid education that I have gotten. And I think that education is what's going to help them out a ton, along with that financial literacy. But we have to work within the confines of what we have. I think a lot of America doesn't realize this is happening because they live in good neighborhoods, and good neighborhoods are funded because of levies. But in the inner cities, not that way. They're really being undereducated and over-policed. So if we could reverse that trend, I think that is something that could help our community out a ton.
Very good. Thank you very much, JD. Drea, I see you shaking your head. So you got a magic wand uplifting us. What would be that one thing you do that would help uplift our community?
Equal education, and not, I hate to use this term, but whitewashed history, where we learn about our history, because it shouldn't be that I'm 30 years old or about to be 30 years old, still learning, about Black history. So I feel like we need to have better, American history, including Black, and that includes Black history, because I think a lot of the things that we're, going through, experiencing now, has been repeated throughout history. And, I just learned about the Tulsa Massacre this year. I just fully grasped, what Juneteenth meant this year. And it shouldn't be that way. These are things that should be taught every year in every system, educational system. And I just think we need to do a better job of having equity amongst our education.
Very good. Thank you very much. Mr. Williamson. So again, thank you for joining us tonight on the panel for the first time. You will be invited back. Trust me, that's just how this works. If you could, and by the way, hold on really quick. Megan says, say it, it's whitewash. She said, you can go ahead and say it, Dre. Mr. Williamson, if you had the ability to change one thing to try to uplift the Black community, what would that be?
It would be to experience the black people in this country centering ourselves above any desire to integrate into something that doesn't want us, above any desire to become something that's more agreeable to people who hate us. If we centered ourselves and we loved ourselves, we would view our own problems as opportunities for us to address and become enriched by addressing, versus waiting for some system that has never really served us that well to address our issues. If we centered ourselves, I just think things would change. We don't center ourselves here. We center this deep desire to just be viewed favorably by people who haven't shown us that they really give a damn about that stuff. And then we morally are so, upright that we won't center ourselves in the way that just makes our communities better. And that's not even, I think that we've seen so much hate that just the very thought of just loving yourself and focusing on yourself, you understand how far that can go awry. So we don't even want to do that. You know what I'm saying? And that's really all we need to do, is love ourselves enough to just fix our own problems. Center ourselves.
Yeah, I like it. And it's true, and it's sad that we look for validation away from ourselves. And we almost overly celebrate it, because it's like, if we've been oppressed by these folks, if we get one little inkling that says, hey, we kind of like you, we're like, yes. And then that's why you see people talk about the exception. Yeah, you see people talk about the exception more than, I mean, that might have been the case, but look at this one person, and Damon, look at Oprah. Like, when I used to hear that, it used to just piss me off and drive me crazy, because I was like, it's one black lady. I'm not mad at her, but like, why is she the example of what every black person can aspire to be? Just because, look, you have Oprah. Like, why are you upset? So, I agree. And then Jordan says, too many people are chasing fame and not wanting to put the hard work in for it. And I think that some of that, I think what gets defined as success is still controlled by the folks who have the system that we're trying to operate in. And there's a young man who has been on this program named Tay. So shout out to Tay, The Takeover. Make sure you check it out. He's got a new song dropping called Skin Black. I'm just going to go ahead and give him a shout out on here. But he had a really great perspective day that kind of falls in line with this. He's an MC. He's making a good living as an MC. He's not making Jay-Z money. He's not making Kendrick money. He's not making that, but he's making a good living as MC.
Get out of Tay's pocket.
Huh?
Get out of Tay's pocket.
I ain't put out what he's making. I'm saying he's making an okay living. Here's the kicker. Because he's not making Jay-Z money or other money, people are like, well, you're not successful. He's just like, I'm making a little bit more. What you're making, or a little bit more than what you're making, do what I love. How the hell am I not successful?
Right.
Because again, we have this standard that is put in front of us of what success is supposed to be, instead of identifying that for ourselves, centering ourselves and say, we'll define our own success.
Yeah.
And we can do that. Thank you. Drea found it. The website is astartingpoint.com. Captain America is still acting. Chris Evans is still playing Captain America, trying to help people across the country. Fast King, magic wand. Go.
Okay, so this is probably very stupid, and some tax lawyer will probably have me assassinated for even suggesting it. But corporations can be people. So why not just incorporate every black person in America as reparations, and now they can become 401c3s? So now we're all tax exempt. We can now be tax havens for any company that desires it. That's my magic wand. I told you, corruption. I don't mind corruption as long as my people profit. I don't give a shit. I mean, obviously this is a family program. I just ruined it. But you know what I meant. Make all black people 401c3s.
You just gave everybody that.
I know. It's cool.
And you just gave that to everybody.
That's what I want. That's what I want. I want to make all black people, because corporations can be people, right? So why not? It works.
So I would tell you, I'm correct. Fasting, I'm not far away from your logic, and that is, we have seen throughout history different groups of people get reparations. Yeah. And that's not an unheard of thing, and it's not an impossible thing to do. And I think that if that could take place for our community, what I will say is, I think that our community would surprise a shit ton of people with how we would be able to uplift ourselves. I think that there's rhetoric that gets created sometimes to us so that we repeat, sometimes by us, but I think it happens more to us, that if we gave all these black folks money, we would be silly or whatever. I genuinely believe that reparations happens, not only would that be good for the black community, we'd be able to lift ourselves up. I think it would be good for the entire economy, because I think that if you take a look at the creativity, the resilience that exists amongst black people, we have had so many things that have happened to us, and the creativity that comes out of that and that spawned from that is absolutely brilliant and amazing. Sometimes it's more centered and directed towards entertainment and entertainment value from that perspective. But imagine if that was taken, that type of creativity and brilliance was taken and centered towards engineering or any type of STEM aspect of what's existing today. I think that we could truly showcase how we can increase not just our wealth, but what it is that we provide for this country, so it would be better for everyone. So to give us reparations, I genuinely believe that everybody would win. It would piss some white people off, but I don't really give a shit about that. What I'm saying, everybody would benefit though. So it's just be mad over there, but the economy is better. Black folks are better. And why wouldn't we want to work? I don't understand, especially with people who want to hold different people in this country down. If the idea is America is supposed to be the best country in the world, that's the idea. That's the conversation that we're having. Then why would you want chunks of America not to be good?
That's the one thing that I've never understood, that we are like, I always think of America as a chain, and like you are only as strong as your weakest link. So I don't understand why you wouldn't bolster education and healthcare. It is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. For this reparation, I like it a lot only because no one has to pay any actual money. It's just something that kind of happens on paper, but we benefit tremendously because of it. A good negotiation is nobody leaves happy, but everybody leaves content. So it's just like, okay, we're not going to give black people money on the front end, but because, we're all 401c3s now, we get to be tax shelters. So some corrupt company, they don't have to go to the Bahamas anymore to go store their money. They can go to Trayvon. Trayvon just got out of jail, and he's now a 401c3 because he went for a nonviolent drug offense. Boom. Give me your monies. Give me all of your monies. I will corrupt your system.
Well, on that note of corrupting the system, I want to thank everybody on the panel for joining us tonight. And we appreciate everybody for tuning in. Make sure you spread the wealth, share on your page if you haven't, like, love, do all those things. We will be back in 2 weeks because remember, we are every other week moving forward. We're no longer doing every week. If you do want to take an opportunity to laugh on Tuesday coming up, we do have the comic / movie / just kind of nerd show called The Geek Seat, which we will be going again live on Tuesday at 8 p.m. and it should be a good time. Ty said,
was right.
Great show, great show, great show, everyone. Thanks for the conversation. Again, I want to thank the panel: Fast King Pharaoh, David Williamson, Just JD, and Drea Hunt. I'm DF, and we appreciate everybody. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Peace.
Peace.